The alien ships loomed in the sky, their massive forms blotting out the sun as they descended upon Earth. It wasn't just a strike. It was an invasion, a declaration of war from a species known for its ruthless efficiency and technological superiority. The people of Earth, still reeling from the chaos of a world on the brink, watched in horror as the invaders made their presence felt. Cities burned as weapons the likes of which humanity had never seen before tore through their defenses. Alien drones patrolled the skies, their sleek metallic surfaces reflecting the firestorms below. The air was thick with the sound of sirens, explosions, and screams of panic. Humanity had never known an enemy like this. The world's leaders, scrambling in the chaos, rallied what little resistance they could muster. The best of humanity, trained soldiers from every corner of the earth, took their final stand in a heavily fortified stronghold. The city around them had already fallen, but this last bastion of defense, an ancient military compound deep in the mountains, was humanity's last hope. Soldiers, disheveled and battered from weeks of skirmishes, lined the walls of the compound. Some of them were seasoned veterans, others barely out of their teens. They had all been trained for something else, never expecting a battle like this, never expecting an invasion that would bring humanity to its knees. As they looked out over the valley, the sky darkened with alien ships. Every part of them screamed that they were doomed. Yet they stood there, not out of hope, but out of a duty ingrained deep in their bones. A duty to protect what was left of their home. Among the soldiers was Captain Alexei Miles, a veteran who had seen more than his fair share of war. His eyes were tired, but still sharp. He stood with his team, soldiers from different countries, each with their own story, their own struggles, their own reasons for fighting. There was Sergeant Marta Hayes, a tech specialist who could hack her way through any security system, and Lieutenant Ravi Patel, a former martial artist who had spent his life studying ancient techniques for self-defense. Then there was Private Jackson, young and eager, though it was clear this was his first real taste of combat. They were a ragtag team thrown together, bound only by the fact that they had nowhere else to go. Alexei looked over at Ravi, whose fingers twitched nervously. "What's the plan?" Ravi asked. He was always the optimist, the one who believed they had a chance, even now. Alexei rubbed his chin. "We don't have much. They'll hit us hard and fast. We hold out until reinforcements arrive." "Reinforcements?" Ravi scoffed, shaking his head. "You mean the ones we've been waiting for since day one?" Alexei didn't respond, his eyes scanning the horizon. He knew it was pointless to talk about reinforcements at this point. Humanity had been abandoned by the powers that once governed it. They were alone. The ground began to rumble, and the air vibrated with the sound of approaching alien craft. In the distance, the first of the invaders' ships appeared, massive and intimidating. The alien soldiers, appearing as monstrous humanoid figures encased in advanced armor, descended in waves, their boots thundering as they hit the ground. Their presence was overwhelming, a sight that made even the most hardened soldiers flinch. "They're coming," Jackson muttered under his breath, his voice thick with fear. Alexei gave him a tight nod. "Stay sharp. Hold the line." The soldiers braced themselves as the first wave of invaders closed in. The alien army was disciplined, cold, and ruthless. They knew exactly how to strike, each soldier expertly trained in the art of war. Their weapons were unlike anything humanity had ever seen: plasma rifles that could melt through steel and energy shields that deflected bullets with ease. The human soldiers fired back with everything they had, but it was clear that their weapons were no match for the alien firepower. Alexei watched as the front lines were mowed down, their bullets disintegrating harmlessly against the alien shields. "Retreat to secondary positions!" Alexei shouted into the comms, trying to regain some semblance of order in the chaos. But even as he gave the order, he knew it was pointless. The battle was already lost. In the midst of the firefight, Ravi pulled Alexei aside. "There's something you don't know about me, Captain." Alexei raised an eyebrow. "What are you talking about?" Ravi glanced around quickly to make sure no one was listening. "I've been training for something like this. A martial art, one that's different. It's something ancient, Something the aliens won't understand. Alexei's brow furrowed in confusion. What? Are you telling me you've been hiding this from the rest of the team? Ravi shook his head. No, it's not about hiding it. It's the only chance we have. If you let me. Alexei cut him off, his voice hard. We don't have time for this, Ravi. We need to fall back now. Ravi looked at him, eyes full of determination. We don't need to fall back, Captain. We need to fight back. Trust me. You'll see. Alexei didn't have time to question him. The ground shook again, and the invaders were closing in faster than ever. Get into position! He shouted. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. Ravi wasn't wrong, they had to try something. As the alien soldiers neared, the human soldiers fought valiantly, but it was clear their tactics weren't working. The aliens weren't retreating. They were relentless, pressing forward with an unyielding force that seemed impossible to overcome. But then, something strange happened. It was a small shift at first, barely noticeable, a single alien soldier hesitating as he charged forward. Then another. And another. Alexei squinted in disbelief. What the hell? The alien soldiers, the ones who had shown no fear, who had struck terror into every human they encountered, were now retreating. The once invincible invaders were fleeing, their disciplined formations crumbling under pressure. Alexei couldn't comprehend it. His heart raced as he watched in confusion. The aliens weren't retreating in disarray, they were running in terror. He turned to Ravi, who stood silently, a small smile tugging at his lips. What's going on? Alexei asked, his voice shaking. Ravi's smile grew wider. It's the art. They never saw it coming. The alien soldiers, who had once looked so menacing, now appeared as if they were running from ghosts, their massive forms scattering in all directions as the human soldiers pressed forward. Each human who confronted them used techniques the aliens had never encountered, movements that were strange, chaotic, and terrifyingly effective. It wasn't just physical power, it was psychological warfare. The humans fought in ways that defied logic, taking the aliens by surprise at every turn. The invaders, accustomed to facing advanced technology and strategy, were completely out of their depth. They had no defense against the ferocity of the human counterattack, the brutal unpredictability of human ingenuity. The tide was turning. And as the last of the alien forces retreated into the sky, leaving behind only confusion and chaos, the humans stood victorious, unified in their unexpected triumph. Alexei, looking out at the battlefield, couldn't help but feel a strange sense of pride. They had done it. Against all odds, they had defeated the invaders. But as the smoke cleared and the echoes of war faded, one thing was certain: humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology. It was their creativity, their ability to adapt, and their unwavering will to survive. The aliens had underestimated them, and that, it turned out, had been their fatal mistake. The humans, still trying to comprehend what had just unfolded, quickly regrouped within the walls of their last stronghold. The battlefield was eerily quiet now, save for the distant hum of alien ships retreating into the sky. Soldiers stood in stunned silence, their weapons lowered, eyes wide with disbelief. They had won, but it was a victory that felt surreal. The aliens, the unstoppable force they had been preparing to face for months, had turned tail and fled, like a wounded animal fleeing a predator. It made no sense. Alexei, his heart still pounding from the adrenaline of the battle, was the first to break the silence. What just happened? His voice was strained, but his mind was racing, trying to piece together the events that had unfolded so rapidly. The aliens had been crushing their forces, then suddenly, they had run. He glanced around at his team, their faces equally puzzled. No one could explain it. Ravi, however, seemed less surprised. His posture had relaxed, and there was a glint in his eye. He stepped forward, his expression unreadable but focused. I told you, he said, his voice low but steady. I told you that we had a chance. Alexei stared at him for a moment, before his gaze shifted to the battlefield, the remnants of the alien forces scattered in every direction. What did you do, Ravi? His tone was harsh, but not angry, just confused, desperate for an explanation. Ravi didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned to look at the sky, the smoke of the battlefield still swirling in the air. It wasn't just me. It was all of us, our training. We've been taught something they don't understand. Something that doesn't make sense to them, something they can't predict. I know you don't get it yet, Captain. But this is just the beginning. The words hung in the air, heavy with mystery, and Alexei felt a sinking feeling in his gut. This wasn't over. No, this was far from over. He could see it in Ravi's eyes, the same look he had seen in his own reflection on the eve of battle, the desperate hope that made them keep going even when defeat seemed inevitable. But what Ravi was saying, that the victory had come from a mysterious, ancient martial art, seemed absurd. How could a bunch of forgotten fighting techniques overcome alien invaders armed with superior technology? Alexei's thoughts were interrupted by Sergeant Hayes, who had been analyzing the reports coming in from their communication systems. Captain, you need to see this, she said, her voice tight. Alexei moved to her side, his attention on the holographic display as she tapped a few buttons, bringing up footage from the battlefield. The screen flickered to life, showing several alien soldiers retreating in full panic, their usual composure shattered. They were running, yes, but not like soldiers retreating from a losing battle. They were running as if they were being chased by something far more terrifying than the humans. That's what I'm talking about, Ravi said quietly, his voice distant as he watched the footage. You see? They didn't just leave. They were scared. We did that. The footage showed a few of the human soldiers, individuals who had been strategically placed throughout the battlefield, acting in ways that defied everything the aliens had expected. Their movements were erratic, unpredictable, brutal, and, above all, inhuman. They didn't fight with the precision or coordination of the alien forces. Instead, they attacked with wild energy, pulling from centuries of forgotten human combat traditions that seemed more like instinct than training. It wasn't a strategy the aliens could counter, because they didn't understand it. And that lack of understanding was their undoing. Alexei's mind reeled. But that doesn't make sense. How could they have been so afraid of us? Ravi looked at him, as though the answer was obvious. Humans are unpredictable, Captain. We're not bound by logic. We're not confined to the rules of warfare. Our strength is in our chaos, our creativity. The aliens, they're used to facing enemies that fight the same way, with the same techniques. They've never encountered anything like this. The realization hit Alexei like a punch to the gut. The aliens, with all their technology and superior firepower, had fallen victim to a simple truth. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt and innovate in the face of adversity. What the humans had done, using an ancient martial art combined with modern tactics, was more than just fighting back. It was a complete reimagining of warfare. The human soldiers didn't just fight, they used the battlefield as a canvas, painting their own survival with brushstrokes of chaos and unpredictability. It's not just the technique, is it? Alexei asked, turning back to Ravi, his voice barely above a whisper. It's everything. It's the way we think, the way we adapt. Ravi nodded slowly. Exactly. They thought they were fighting a species with predictable tactics, like every other race they've encountered. They thought we would crumble, that our technology would fail us, or that we would fall to their superior numbers. But they didn't count on our creativity, our ability to turn the rules of war upside down. They thought they were fighting a species they could dominate. They didn't realize they were facing a species that has survived against the odds for millennia. The implications of Ravi's words began to sink in, and Alexei's mind started to churn with a mix of awe and fear. This was no longer just a fight for survival. It was something much bigger. The aliens hadn't just been defeated by force, they had been defeated by human ingenuity, the ability to adapt and overcome. The techniques Ravi had spoken of were only the beginning. The human soldiers had fought like ghosts, unpredictable, untamed, and utterly terrifying to the invaders. But there was still a lingering question in the back of Alexei's mind. If what we did was so powerful, why didn't we use it sooner? Why hide it? Ravi's gaze hardened, a flicker of something darker in his eyes. Because we weren't supposed to. We were waiting for the right moment, the moment when humanity's true potential could be unlocked. And now it's time. Alexei's thoughts raced as he processed Ravi's words. The ancient techniques, the forgotten art, it was a weapon, yes, but it was also something more. Something the aliens had no way of preparing for. The humans had just unlocked a power that could change the course of history. We've won, Alexei said finally, his voice firm. But this isn't over. Not by a long shot. No, Ravi agreed, a grim smile crossing his face. This is just the beginning. The aliens have underestimated us, Captain. And now, they will learn what it means to face humanity. The words were final, and in them, Alexei could hear the weight of what was to come. The invaders had retreated, but their war was far from over. Humanity had just proven it had the will to fight back, but now it would have to face the consequences. The aliens would come again, no doubt. But next time, they would know one thing for certain: humanity was not the helpless species they had once thought. And that, perhaps, was the most dangerous weapon of all. The days following the unexpected victory were filled with a mixture of confusion, awe, and uncertainty. The human soldiers who had fought in the battle with such ferocity, their unorthodox methods now legendary, were debriefed and analyzed by military leaders, but no one could fully comprehend what had just happened. The battlefield had been abandoned, but the aftermath left only questions. The aliens were gone, at least for now, but no one could ignore the deeper implications of what had unfolded. Alexei couldn't shake the image of the aliens fleeing in terror, their disciplined lines crumbling into chaos at the sight of their first encounter with human unpredictability. It had been more than just a battle one, it was a moment of revelation. Humanity had faced its most advanced foe and, through a combination of ancient techniques and pure, raw ingenuity, had forced them to retreat. The question remained, would the aliens return? And if they did, could humanity replicate the success they just achieved, or had they used up all their tricks? Ravi, for his part, was not nearly as concerned about the aliens' return. He was focused on the next phase, something much larger, much more dangerous. He had seen what the humans were capable of, and he knew this victory, though significant, was only a brief flash in the pan of what was to come. The aliens were not just a military threat, they were a species that, by nature, didn't retreat. They would regroup, recalibrate, and come back stronger, faster, and more prepared for the chaos humanity had unleashed. We've proven we can win, Alexei, Ravi said one morning, his voice heavy with certainty. But the aliens will be back. They will adapt. They always do. And they'll come with everything they have, and more. We're not done with them yet. Alexei leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He had been thinking the same thing. The retreat was just a temporary setback for the invaders, a shock to their system. Humanity hadn't just won a battle, they had disrupted the very foundation of the aliens' understanding of warfare. And that disruption had left an opening, a crack in the facade of the invaders' superiority. They would come again. They had to. But when they did, humanity had to be ready. The question, then, was what came next? Was there another secret they were holding back, something even the invaders hadn't anticipated? Alexei knew Ravi well enough by now to realize that there was more to this story. The ancient techniques Ravi spoke of were only a piece of a much larger puzzle. They had won this battle, but it felt like a warning. The true test was yet to come. We need to prepare, Alexei said, his voice low but determined. We need to take what we've learned and build on it. We can't afford to be reactive next time. We need to be ahead of them. Ravi nodded. Exactly. And that means not just mastering the techniques we've uncovered but also evolving them. We have to think beyond our own limits. The aliens are methodical. They'll learn from this. We need to get ahead of them. Over the next few weeks, the human military began to regroup and train with an intensity that surpassed anything seen before. The survivors of the battle were assigned to special units, where they refined the unpredictable fighting styles that had so thoroughly upended the alien forces. But even as they drilled, there was a sense of foreboding hanging over them. The victory felt hollow, not because it wasn't real, but because they knew something darker was looming. The aliens had tasted defeat, and their pride would demand vengeance. In the meantime, word began to spread of the new techniques. The ancient martial art that had played such a crucial role in the defeat of the invaders was no longer a secret. Across the globe, soldiers, civilians, and even civilians with no formal training began practicing the techniques, hoping to tap into the same power that had won the battle. It didn't take long before the first reports came in. People were changing. The art had a strange effect, unlocking something deep inside those who practiced it. There were whispers of soldiers experiencing heightened senses, a strange instinct that guided their movements on the battlefield. Some reported hearing whispers in their minds, voices that were almost too faint to understand but felt strangely familiar. It was as if the martial art had unlocked something ancient in their minds, an instinct buried deep within their collective consciousness, a link to something far older than the human race itself. Ravi had been the first to notice. He saw the changes in those who practiced the art more intensely. Their movements were faster, sharper, and more in tune with the flow of battle. They were no longer fighting with just the body, they were fighting with something more. There was a sense of connection, a deep-rooted sense of purpose. It was as though they were tapping into a hidden power that lay dormant, waiting for the right moment to emerge. "We're becoming something else," Ravi said one night, speaking to Alexei in private. "It's not just the techniques. It's the way people are changing. The art, it's awakening something in us, something we didn't know was there. The aliens didn't just underestimate our fighting skills. They underestimated our potential as a species." Alexei felt a chill run down his spine as he listened to Ravi's words. The idea that humanity was awakening to some primal, forgotten power was both exhilarating and terrifying. But what did it mean for the future? Were they truly ready to face what lay ahead? As the weeks wore on, more and more reports came in of strange occurrences, civilian groups practicing the martial art in secret, inexplicable victories in small skirmishes around the globe, people talking about visions of a distant past, and others claiming to have heard voices or seen figures in their dreams. The world was changing, and no one knew exactly what it meant. But the aliens were not blind to what was happening. The first reconnaissance ships returned to Earth, their sensors detecting the strange energy surges emanating from human populations. The higher-ups in the alien command center were briefed on the unexpected turn of events. It became clear to them, humanity wasn't just a primitive species to be conquered. It was a species that had the potential to become something far more dangerous. They had tapped into an unknown power, one that even the invaders could not understand. The first of the retaliation fleets was already on its way, and this time, they would be prepared for whatever humanity had unleashed. The aliens would not let themselves be humiliated again. But there was something new in the air, something that made the alien commanders uneasy. Humanity was no longer the same species they had first encountered. They had evolved. And as the alien ships made their way toward Earth, they realized they were about to face an enemy unlike any other, a human force that had tapped into an ancient power, one that was unpredictable, unknowable, and unstoppable. And this time, the humans wouldn't be caught off guard. The moment the alien fleet arrived in Earth's orbit, the atmosphere on the planet shifted. News of their arrival spread faster than the shockwave of their weapons, and humanity was once again on high alert. The military, having prepared for the worst, didn't waste time gathering their forces. Soldiers who had been trained in the ancient martial art were now ready, more powerful than ever, their abilities enhanced by the continued practice of their newfound skills. Humanity's response was no longer just a defensive reaction, it was a statement. They were no longer the prey. They were hunters. The alien fleet arrived with overwhelming force, but their arrival wasn't met with the usual panic and fear. Instead, humanity stood in defiance. Cities were evacuated, military bases fortified, and resistance cells activated all over the world. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. The soldiers, now trained in techniques that combined ancient combat wisdom with modern weaponry, were no longer mere men and women. They were the tip of a spear that would pierce the heart of the alien invasion. But the aliens had learned from their earlier mistake. They were more cautious, more calculated. Their ships hovered above major cities, their weapons poised for annihilation. They expected the usual human reaction: terror, chaos, and a swift collapse. Instead, what they saw was a calm, calculated humanity, waiting. There was no panic. There was no fear. There was only resolve. General Sato, one of the human leaders in the Pacific Theater, stood before his soldiers, his voice booming over the comms. "We have nothing to fear. The art we wield is stronger than their weapons. We've seen it with our own eyes. Now we use it. For Earth. For humanity. And for the future." Across the world, the message was the same. Humanity had evolved into something greater. No longer shackled by their primitive instincts or outmatched by superior technology, they were now in control of their destiny. They had faced an enemy that underestimated them, and now, that enemy would pay the price. The first strike came from the human forces. Thousands of soldiers, synchronized and unified, charged toward the alien vessels in a blitzkrieg-like assault. Their movements were a blend of precision and unpredictability, a devastating mix of ancient martial techniques and cutting-edge technology. Alien turrets fired, but their aim was erratic. Humanity's unpredictability had thrown them off balance once again. It was clear that the aliens had not prepared for this. Their soldiers, trained to fight with the cold efficiency of machines, were unprepared for the human soldiers who fought with passion, with chaos, with everything they had. The aliens were quick to retaliate, but every attempt to counter humanity's assault was met with resistance that they simply couldn't predict. Soldiers who had never seen combat before suddenly performed feats of strength and speed that defied all logic, overwhelming even the most advanced of alien technology. The tide of the battle shifted again. Alien commanders, who had once viewed humanity as nothing more than pests to be crushed, now began to realize that they had been wrong. The humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something greater. They were fighting for the right to exist, to adapt, and to thrive. This battle was not just about power, it was about resilience, about ingenuity, about the very core of what it meant to be human. As the human forces continued to press forward, there was a moment of clarity. It wasn't just the physical prowess or the advanced technology that had made humanity such a formidable force. It was the combination of everything that made them human, their capacity for creativity, for change, for unpredictable solutions to impossible problems. And the aliens had underestimated that. It wasn't just soldiers who were fighting. Entire cities had mobilized, with civilians joining in the resistance. They weren't trained warriors, but they had been affected by the same ancient techniques that had altered the soldiers. They fought with a ferocity that no one had expected. And even in the face of alien weaponry that could level entire cities in a single blast, humanity found a way to fight back. They adapted, they improvised, and they turned the tide. Alien ships were down from orbit, crashing to Earth with explosive force. Their weaponry was shattered, their fleets falling apart one by one. The alien commanders tried to regain control, but the more they fought, the more they realized that humanity was no longer the easy target they had once been. They were the ones who were outmatched. They were the ones on the retreat. As the first few weeks of the invasion passed, the alien fleet began to fragment. The humans had gained the upper hand, their resilience turning the tide of battle. What had started as a desperate fight for survival had become a counteroffensive of legendary proportions. The aliens, now on the defensive, began to retreat, but not without leaving a clear message: they would return. They had underestimated humanity before, but they would not make the same mistake again. Humanity's response was one of defiance, but also of understanding. They knew that the aliens would be back. But they also knew that they had the upper hand now. They had learned their enemy's weaknesses. They had adapted. And next time, humanity would be ready. The world celebrated their victory, but in the hearts and minds of the people, there was no room for complacency. The knowledge of the alien threat remained. And though the invasion had been repelled, humanity knew they had only just begun their true battle for the future. The ancient martial arts that had turned the tide of battle were now part of the human legacy. They would not be forgotten. Humanity had tapped into something primal, something deep, and they would continue to evolve. They had faced the greatest enemy they could have imagined and come out victorious. But now, they had to prepare for what lay ahead, the next step in their journey to become not just survivors, but masters of their own fate. And as humanity stood united in the face of what was to come, one thing was clear: the aliens had learned the hard way that humanity would never again be the weak, defenseless species they had once been. The future belonged to humanity, and they were ready to take their place among the stars, not as a species to be conquered, but as one to be feared.